What's up guys? For today's video, I'm working on the last thing I wanted to do before I take the pond prowler out on the water to give it its first test to see how I like it. After the last video, I was able to snag a really cheap utility trailer off Facebook. So my goal for today is to convert this into basically a mini boat trailer that's gonna work really well for loading and unloading the pond prowler. All right, so first thing I wanted to do was take off these spring clamps here. I can just see this ripping a hole in the side of the boat as I'm trying to put it on. I'm pretty sure it's just this retaining pin right here on each side. If I can get that pin out, this should all just slide out. And then also it can be reinstalled if I end up getting a gate for the back of it. All right, let's see what we gotta do to get these off. So what I'm thinking is if I can just rotate it like this, put my punch on the end here. There it is. It looks like it was just rusted in place. I tapped it far enough to grab it with the vice grips and then I was able to pull it out. So now with the pin out, this should slide right out. And then we got our spring. And then now if I wanted to, I can reinstall this. I just need to get a new pin. I can even use like a cotter pin or something like that. But this takes away this from sticking out into the middle of the trailer there, which with a plastic boat coming on and off, I could just see that leading to problems. All right, so this one I was able to just hammer through. Doesn't look to be as rusted as the other one. So once I got it started, it slid right out. I'd really like to clean up the look of the trailer. Do a very light sanding of anywhere I see rust on the trailer. And then I'm gonna hopefully spray this thing down with just a coat of enamel, and that's just gonna bring it back to look a heck of a lot better than it does now. Before I do any more sanding, I'm gonna take these old lights off first. Okay, 5/16. Oh boy, everything's gonna be rusted on this, huh? That took a lot. Holy crap. Both bolts broke off. Hopefully the other side's a little easier. Yeah, other side came off really easy. One bolt snapped, the other one just unscrewed. All right, and now the side markers are off, so that pretty much takes off all the lights. Now I'm gonna go ahead and get the rest of the sanding done so we can get this outside and sprayed down so it starts drying off and we can do the rest of the trailer. Okay, now with this washed down, I'm gonna let this dry for a couple minutes. I'm gonna get the air blow out here just to help it along, and then we'll be good to throw a coat of paint on it. All right, after giving this about an hour to dry, I think we are good to put our coat of paint on. As I said, this is just gonna be to clean it up. It's not gonna be perfect, but it's gonna look a lot better than it does now. For paint, we're gonna be using this high performance Rust-Oleum enamel. And real quick, I'm gonna tape off these Tractor Supply logos so I don't paint over them. And then the only thing else that I'm gonna tape off is the info sticker that has the VIN on it. It's the other one, and then the info sticker. So far, so good. All right, so it's been about a half hour or so out here. Considering it's about 800 degrees outside, I'm pretty sure this is dry. This enamel dries super fast in general. Yeah, this looks good. Oh yeah, this completely changed the look of the entire trailer. Really happy we did this. I'm gonna peel those stickers just because I'll have more room out here to do it. Get these logos on display, and then we'll get this back in the garage and then start working on some maintenance. Yeah, not bad if I do say so myself. Let's get this back in the garage and we can start working on everything else. All right, guys, so we're back out here the next day. I ended up giving this about 24 hours to let the paint cure. That way we weren't messing with that in any way, and plus it was starting to get really hot, so I just wanted to let the garage cool down a little bit. My goal for today is to now get the light kit installed. I ended up ordering a new one off Amazon. I'll throw a link in the description. This is the Max Haul kit. I've used this before. It's worked really well. It's submersible. It comes with all the wiring you need, and it's about 20 bucks. So I was really happy with that rather than having to piece together a kit because I had only purchased the actual lights last time, not realizing this whole thing needs to be rewired. All right, so like I was saying, this is the LED trailer light kit from Max Haul. This is a submersible light kit, so this will be good to drop into the water. In the kit here, okay, looks like we have 2 rear lights, 2 side markers, the wiring. I've used these before, like I said, they've worked great, so it should be a pretty easy installation. All right, so in the instructions, the main thing we need to take a look at here is the wiring illustration. It looks like yellow-brown will be the left light and green-brown will be the right light. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna go ahead and get the wiring harness started from the front of the boat and then start running the yellow-brown on the left and the green-brown on the right. All right, so starting up front here, the first thing I wanted to do was attach the white ground wire to the trailer tongue. That will kind of set everything up for how we're gonna route everything. I'm gonna be doing it on the right side of the trailer tongue. My plug-in on the truck is on the right side, so this gives the most amount of wire length. I'm gonna drill a pilot hole and then attach this with a self-tapping screw. All right, so this is a 5/16 drive here. Go ahead and get this installed. Perfect. For now, I just want to make sure this is all wired up and working. So I'm just going to twist up the end of this wire here. Okay, so with the ground wire attached to the trailer, we're going to run the left and right wires for each tail light down this center tube. And then once we get under the trailer there, it's actually gonna go left and right and then split off to run down each side of the trailer. There's actually tubes welded to the trailer to route the wires in different directions. So we're gonna try to follow the same path that the original setup was done. That way the wires are just out of the way and protected while they're on the road. So first thing I need to do is snake these down the tube till they pop out the other end, and then we can go from there. Start pushing it down. Sliding nicely, it's not binding up anywhere yet. Good. The wires are coming out the bottom, so I'm gonna get down there, pull the wires all the way through, and then we'll keep routing based on the tubes under the trailer. So now I'm just gonna keep pulling these through till we get it all the way through. Okay, so looks like that's it. All right, so now for the left side of the trailer, looking at it from the front, we're gonna run the green and brown. As I said, there is like a tube right here. You can't really see it behind this angle, but the wire should thread right into it. And then it's gonna pop out on the other side where there's another tube that runs it down the side of the trailer. Now coming up top, you see we came up the one brace, and then now we're gonna be coming down this tube where the old wire comes out of, here. And then we're gonna push this all the way down. There we go. Now pulling this through from this end, nice and easy. And now we have successfully run the green and brown wire to where it's gonna get wired up to the rear trailer light through that side tube. Now I noticed there's no side tube on this side of the trailer, so I'm gonna get under there and see kind of how they did it before, and then probably just mimic how they ran it. All right, so on this side we have the same thing. There's a tube running down behind this angle. And then now I'm not sure where it's expected to go over there, so we might just have to zip tie down the trailer if that's the case. Looks like that same tube may have been here. I see a couple weld spots, so maybe it was just knocked off at some point by the previous owner. But no big deal. As I said, I'm just gonna use the grate to zip tie it right down the side. All right, and now that we have the wire down by the tail light mounting point, I'm gonna go ahead and get these tail lights mounted. This is the left side tail light that's gonna be connecting to the brown and yellow wires. For the white wire, this is your ground. You can either connect this to a ground point on your trailer, or if you actually just sand off a little bit of the metal on the connecting point here, you can put your ground wire right onto the mounting stud. And then as you connect it onto the boat, it will ground itself out that way. All right, so like I said, I'm just gonna grind off the paint right here. All right, that looks good. So I'm gonna put the ground wire on that side over to the side. We still have our wire connections up here, so we're not losing access to them. And then I'm just gonna hand tighten this down so we can work on everything else. And these are 7/16 nuts in the back. You wanna make sure you have a good connection for your ground, or else your taillights are not gonna work. And then now with this mounted up, we see how much room we need for this wire connection here. So now I can go ahead and trim this a little bit. And now these wires are ready to get connected. All right, so at this point, I have both of the trailer lights mounted and ready for wiring. I also went ahead and threw on the side reflectors, so that just kind of ties the whole look together. I'm gonna turn you guys on to some really cool wire connectors that I use for most of my wiring projects, especially for anything exposed to the elements. Let me get everything set up and I'll show you what I mean. All right, so I got a couple things to show you here. Number one, this is a marine heat shrink kit. This is your regular heat shrink material, but it also has glue on the inside. So when you heat this up, it melts it and seals the edges and also the interior with a waterproof glue to keep everything watertight. Number two is I have these waterproof self-soldering wire connectors. Basically, you put each end of the wire into the wire connector here. You overlap it on that bead of solder. That way, when you heat this up, the solder melts and you get a soldered connection, as well as the whole tube is a heat shrink, so you get the mechanical connection. And then the colored bands on each side, that's another type of waterproof glue. And then you get a waterproof connection. Now, you could just use this with nothing else, but since the connection doesn't look as clean with the clear wire connector here, I'll then cover this with the heat shrink afterwards just to make it look nice. So now for the heat shrink, you can use a heat gun. I used to use a really big bulky heat gun, but since then I've picked up this, it's called a hot air station. This is used for like computer repair and things like PCB boards and stuff like that. But it also works really well for doing heat shrink. It has a little dock. As soon as you lift it up, it just turns on. So then you can just start working with whatever you want. And then when you're done, you set it back down and it will cool itself off while it's sitting there, so you don't even have to worry about it. Now, the one thing to keep in mind if you decide to get one of these is that if you have this turned on and you knock it over, it will start up. I accidentally burned a hole in my carpet on my last boat doing that. So just something to be aware of. Overall, it works really well and I highly recommend it for any kind of wiring jobs like this. I'll have links in the description to all this wiring stuff for you guys. I've showed it to you before and everyone that's tried it has really liked it. So like I said, I can highly recommend it, all of these pieces that I'm working with right now. All right, so we know where our wires are gonna be, so we can go ahead and cut off the excess on this side. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the ends off these wires so they're ready to go. And then for these, we're just gonna strip back a little bit of the wire. You don't need to strip back a lot at all. It's about that much is fine. There we go. And then now we're going to thread on the heat shrink first. Now we're gonna put on the wire connectors. So So I'm gonna start with just pushing the green in. If you can push the wires into themselves, that's a great way to get another good connection. But even if they're just sitting on top of each other, the solder does a really good job. I will heat shrink the ends first. That way it grips onto the wires, so you don't have to worry about them sliding out. And then I'll work on melting the solder in the center. So let's start, like I said, by heat shrinking the ends. Okay, that's one end. Okay, we'll do the same thing on the other side. Then once you have your end shrunk, you can work on the center. I like to do it from each angle, and then once it starts to melt, I try to come from the underside and then let kind of gravity do its thing with the solder, pulling it into the wires. And then once it's basically as flat as the heat shrink, you'll know that the solder has melted. And you can also see the bright silver solder as it melts into the wire. So now at this point, those connections are soldered and heat shrunk together. So you could leave them just like this, but I'm gonna give this a second to cool, and then I'm gonna pull the heat shrink on top of it and then use the black heat shrink just to make it look a little bit cleaner. All right, so let's pull the heat shrink over it. Like that. And now we're going to heat shrink this on top. And if you can see, there's the glue coming out the side. That's what I was referring to with the waterproof heat shrink. That glue will seal up that connection to make sure no water gets in there if you were using another type of wire connector. This is just kind of double waterproofing the wire connections. I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing to the other side. Then we'll go up front and we'll add the ring connector to the ground, and then we should be ready to test out the lights. All right, now for this front wire connector, we're gonna do basically the exact same thing. I'm gonna grab ourselves some heat shrink to clean it up once it's done. And then now we need to pick a ring connector that fits the wire and the screw. All right, so same thing. We're gonna go ahead and thread on our heat shrink. And then the ring connector, which this is still actually a little too long. Let's trim this a little bit more. Yeah, should be good. And this goes into, there's a little hole in there. Now this is gonna get crimped. Okay, so now it's crimped on. Now this is a waterproof ring connector, so now we can go ahead and heat shrink this on. Now again, we could leave it like this, but I think adding the black heat shrink over it just makes it look nice. And like I said, adds a little extra waterproofing. And now we can go ahead and reconnect it to the trailer. All right, and there we go. All right, so with everything hooked up, let's go ahead and start the car and see if it works. There we go, we got lights. For the trailer, originally I was gonna do a sheet of plywood that I carpeted, but instead I'm gonna be going with hardwood. This is gonna survive much, much longer dipping it into the water. Plywood, even if you seal it and even if it's pressure treated, when you're dunking that into the water every time, it's gonna start delaminating and coming apart a lot quicker. I think these are 8-foot by 6-inch boards, something along those lines. They actually fit really perfect in here. The only thing I need to do now is bolt them down onto the trailer. Now to do that, usually I would use stainless hardware for anything that's going to be out in the elements. However, because this is pressure treated wood, if you use stainless hardware, there's a good chance that you're going to get a lot of corrosion that way. So instead, I decided to go with galvanized hardware. I went and got a bunch of galvanized carriage bolts. I'm going to be running them through from the top down, and I'm going to be countersinking the holes enough so there won't be any bumps when you're sliding the boat on and off. Let's go ahead and get this wood bolted down and hopefully get the boat on the trailer by the end of this video. All right, I'm not trying to overthink this. I think the boards look pretty good. They're all nice and even along the backside. All right, so I'm just gonna use this snap line to make a line, and then I'll come through and mark off the drill spots. And all right, that's perfect. And then now I can just come through with each board and measure in right here. And I'll just run this all the way down. Okay, that actually worked pretty well. Let's get our bolt in there. Yeah, we should have enough. Especially once we start countersinking everything, so. All right, well, the countersinking worked perfectly. The bolts are all flush now. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a washer and a nut on the bottom. That will lock them in place. I'm not gonna crank them all the way down just to get them snug. That way I can adjust the fronts, get those all bolted down, and then we'll see how flat it lays and if we need to add any supporting bolts down the center cross member. All right, so with the top set of bolts in place, all the wood is very much secured down to the trailer now. However, I can still see that we're probably gonna need to run a line of bolts down the center because some of the boards are bowed up like this. And I'm really just trying to get everything to lay flat. Let me go ahead and take a look at where's a good spot to do that. We'll get those installed and then check it out when it's done. Don't shake the trailer too much because I am I'm just saying I'm under it, so I'm just gonna stand here still. Just don't murder me, please. Be very yeah, for you, yeah. Just stand on it. So I just need you to stand on the board. I promise I won't drill through your foot. Probably. All right, now I gotta switch to a bigger drill bit. And just gently push down. Just gently. More. Stop, right there. Good. All right, so with that last set of bolts in place and the one extra bolt I needed to just fix this one board that was really bowed topside, all of the boards have been installed and look great. Everything is super solid. At this point, this trailer is really good to go. In the next video, I'm gonna be installing an I-winch to the front of the boat and then figuring out the boat winch itself installed to the front tongue. That way, it's gonna transform this fully restored utility trailer into a pond prowler boat trailer. If you guys found this video helpful and you want to see more videos like this, such as restorations and taking the pond prowler out on the water, don't forget to subscribe. I got a lot of great videos coming out throughout the year and more. If you guys have any questions or feedback on anything I did today, feel free to drop a comment below. We've also got a really cool Discord community. If you're looking for other like-minded people to chat with, there'll be links for that in the description as well. All of the tools and supplies I used, I'll also link in the description in case you guys are trying to do this yourself. And keep an eye out for the update where I get this installed and out on the water. Thanks for watching.